PhD in Progress, Episode 22. This week, we recount our final days as graduate students, our first days as doctors, and the roads ahead of us. Let's go! Welcome back to the PhD in Progress podcast, where we talk about your education, your career, and your life. I'm Jason.
I'm Dr. Kelly.
And I'm Dr. Nikhil.
Yeah, double doctors.
Whoop, whoop.
Sweet.
Yeah. So Dr. Kelly and Dr. Nikhil both defended recently, right?
Last week. Kelly
last
went
week.
on Monday, and I went on Wednesday, and...
Another one of our friends went on Thursday. It was just a week of partying and cake and...
champagne.
Lots of champagne.
Yeah.
And parents meeting professors and all kinds of fun stuff.
Oh, we should relate all those awesome stories that we were talking about before. I feel like people would relate on some level to that, maybe. So, in this episode, we kind of wanted to focus on the aspects of finishing up your PhD. We talked about this with the Dr. Abigail show before, more of the technical aspects of, printing out your thesis, submitting stuff, what forms you have to sign.
Right. The mechanics of graduating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is a daunting process now that we've been through it.
It's not trivial. I mean, running around getting signatures from all kinds of different people, I don't know.
And the problem is that it's different at every institution, right? So even if we were to give our advice about how we got through it here, it would have no bearing on what another department or how another school does it.
Exactly. So on this episode, I think we should focus on the emotional aspects, maybe, of defending, followed by because you two basically have jobs lined up.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Kelly definitely has a job lined up that she'll talk about a bit, and Nikhil's been working on a project for a while outside of grad school that he's transformed into a business along with...
Yeah, you call it
one
a
of our friends.
project, but I think the word I would use is company.
Okay. Aren't companies projects?
Yes,
More
but
official projects.
Yeah, but you tell somebody you're working on a project, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool, that's nice." And you tell someone you started a company, they suddenly are like, "Oh,
Fancy. Ooh.
Oh, whatever. It's like Tom York doing a new project. He's doing some kind of band that involves something weird. You're kind of doing a thing that involves something weird.
something weird."
No,
you think what I'm doing is weird?
No, man. Can't just go along with it.
Okay. We can
Never
start
mind.
with Kelly, though. How about
Yeah, let's start with Kelly. So, Kelly,
Sure.
what's up in your life?
So, going into the defense and writing my thesis was a tough and sort of isolating endeavor, but luckily for me, Nikhil is right down the hall from me and was graduating the same week as me, so we were going through a lot of the process at the same time, and so we sort of had each other as an emotional shoulder to lean on, and those last few weeks, everyone said that we were attached at the hip, that we didn't leave each other's side. We were just constantly talking about what was going on.
It made your defense talk really awkward.
Yes. No, I did cut him off for the defense talk. I was up there by myself.
I was in the front row, though.
You couldn't be too far away.
Yeah.
But so, leading up to that, as Jason, now, actually getting ready to defend.
Yep.
It's just a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
Is what I would call it.
That's a good way to put it.
Because you're going to do it. You're going to get it done. You have sort of maybe a timeline laid out for yourself. You have people around you supporting you and getting you through it. But there's still so many details to worry about that as soon as I'm like, okay, I'm good on this one part, I go, oh crap, what about this other part? I haven't even thought about that today yet. And you get very anxious about getting ready for the end. Mm-hmm. And then even when I'm not thinking about my thesis and my defense and finishing that up, I go, oh crap, I don't have a job. Like, the moment you let yourself relax on sort of the academic sense and give yourself a break there, if you're in the process of writing or any sort of thing, you're like, okay, I'm going to take an hour to just watch TV, play some music, do whatever to relax. then the other part of, oh crap, I don't have a job, starts eating away at you.
Yeah.
So it's just all around, it's just total and complete anxiety leading up to especially the day of my defense. The weekend before, I was having severe heart palpitations and like borderline panic attacks. I was actually really worried about myself. And so I felt very sick and it just wasn't very healthy. And so 2 nights before my defense, I just said, enough. I said, you cannot continue on this way. I feel like your heart's going to explode before you actually do this. So just knock it off. Quit it. Stop. Don't let this bother you anymore.
And I will say, you're not a particularly anxious person to begin with.
No, I'm not.
So that is saying a decent amount.
So I can totally relate to this anxiety. And I think what made me so anxious leading up to my defense is that there was just so much beyond my control. Like, up until this point, I could do a lot of my work and the things I needed to do on my own without relying on other people. Mm-hmm. And for this final run-up to your defense, you need to rely on your advisor, your committee, administration, room booking people in some office you've never heard of on the other side of the campus. All these things need to come together at the right time in the right place for your defense to happen. And it's nerve-wracking. Like, one of my readers, one of my committee members, didn't turn in, like, a piece of paperwork to the graduate school office until, 4 days before my defense. Mm. And this is, like, required for me to even schedule the defense and post the announcement. And so, like, up until, like, a few days before I was supposed to give this talk, and, like, my parents had booked plane tickets and all that stuff, I wasn't even allowed to announce it. And without that announcement, I wouldn't have graduated. Right? So it's just this, like, you just feel kind of helpless in that situation. You're like, I'm reliant on this person who I can't force to do anything, and I can't do it myself.
Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of the anxiety comes from.
That's really, you're both describing my life right now. And that throughout most of my dissertation, I've been very independent in my work. My boss would, ask for some update every now and then, and I'd give it to her, and she'd be like, great. Maybe do this, maybe do that, whatever. But it's all been up to me. And, this varies from person to person, lab to lab, PI to PI. But in my experience so far, it's just been super independent. And as that is turning for these last couple of weeks, where I have to submit my dissertation on Friday to my readers, and I still don't have as much input as I need from others, like looking over it and making different edits. And so that's a little nerve-wracking. On top of I don't have a job lined up yet. I do have a meeting at a company, actually, on Thursday, tomorrow.
Yeah, that's tomorrow, Jason.
Oh, yeah. That means I have to go home and do lots of research on this company. And so that's also nerve-wracking. Like, how am I going to do this and that? And my girlfriend's birthday is also this Saturday.
Yeah, it's
this
endpoint
all
is just
this stuff.
Yeah, it's the culmination of all of these different pieces of your world coming together and having to get it all done at one time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that makes it so nerve-wracking.
Well, and you have to think about all these other relevant details that you haven't had to worry about for a while. So, for example, where are you getting your health insurance next month? Right? If you have a job lined up, your employer needs to make sure that you pick up, the date that your enrollment is terminated and all these other details. Mm-hmm. And, for 7 years, you hadn't had to think about health insurance. And all of a sudden, it's now like a major thing in your life.
You're an adult.
Yeah.
Wow.
Or maybe you've never really had to think about health insurance at all. If you've never had a job outside of going to school or working under your parents or whatever. That's my case, anyway.
Yep, me too.
Mm-hmm.
But throughout the process, I would do little things to try to make me feel more in control. So when it was time to actually print my thesis before I went to the binders, whether it was kosher or normal or not, I printed out a chapter of my thesis, took it over to the Mudd Library where we have to submit our dissertations to Princeton, and I said, look at it. tell me if it's okay, because I'm not going to print this without you saying that it's going to go through. So I brought over, some of my figures that I was a little worried about font size, and I made them look at it. And so them giving me the sort of, basic seal of approval, it wasn't official or anything, but they were like, yeah, it looks good. That gave me a breather for a second, that I was like, okay, I can move forward on this. I can go ahead and print my thesis, and it's going to be okay. So if you can take those little steps, even if it might be a pain in the butt to walk across campus in the middle of winter, it made me feel so much better moving forward with the process, knowing that the next time I went there with my thesis in hand, it would go nice and smooth.
So for me, the one thing that helped kind of reduce my anxiety was surprisingly a conversation I had with my advisor. And so
that
what
is
he,
surprising.
Yeah,
yeah,
so
that's very surprising.
What he told me was, essentially, no one cares about your thesis. And by doing that, he lowered the stakes. And that made me feel a lot better about what I'm doing. He's like, look, your committee knows your work. They're not going to read it too carefully. And, I've been following your project for the whole 5 years, or 6 years, or whatever, 7 years. And, I don't even remember in retrospect how long I've been here. And, by lowering the stakes, it just made me, realize that it wasn't that important that I had all my, I's dotted and T's crossed in my thesis. That didn't matter. What mattered was that I had a bound copy and that it looked like a thesis.
Yeah. That it was thick and
right.
there was pictures in there. But that might not be true of other institutions.
I think it's generally more true in the sciences than in the humanities. In the humanities, the goal of your PhD is to produce more of a written document, like a book, that is your work. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Whereas for scientists, your work is what you've published and things that you've contributed to the broader body of scientific knowledge.
So both of you, getting back to the more emotional aspects of this, both of you had your families come in for your dissertation. Or your defense. How was that? How did it go? Did you enjoy having your family? What did they think about you talking about your science?
Yeah, that was actually another real emotional sticking point for me. Because, at Princeton, our defense is a public oral presentation. We have in our department, no closed door session afterwards or whatever. It's just your final presentation is to your professors and your family and potentially the public at the same time. So I, since I grew up in New Jersey, had a lot of my family and friends and even people from out of state come to watch my defense. And that was it was a difficulty in creating my presentation, in doing enough scientifically to satisfy my professors and committee members, and also explain enough in layman's terms so that my family could understand it somewhat and not fall asleep during the presentation, that they had some sort of entertainment for the 45 minutes.
And fruit fly sex actually kind of entertaining.
Yeah, I think that was the project was actually the key, because
and the videos of flies copulating.
Yeah,
it's so important to have the videos.
Multimedia was definitely the key for keeping attention in my family.
Yes.
So they claim they understood everything. I don't really know if that's the truth, but I somehow managed to satisfy sort of everybody in the room. Because I've seen presentations before that are way on, the technical, scientific aspect, and everyone in the room is falling asleep, and I've seen way on the opposite end where it's all geared towards the family and all the scientists are bored. Yeah. So, I think I've met the happy medium. I mean, everyone seems satisfied, but
I think there's always this temptation to, talk about how much you've done. You want to include everything, even if it didn't, contribute to a nice narrative or a story. And, I think that we both decided that wasn't what we were going to do. We focused on, 1 or 2 narratives within our PhD work and stuck to those. And I didn't even mention, any of the technology development I've been doing, or Kelly didn't even mention, one entire project that she did. So, having a streamlined talk makes it easier to sort of bridge that gap between, being accessible to the general public and being rigorous enough to meet, your committee's demands.
Yeah, telling stories are key.
Right.
Then the other part of it was having my family in the room and sort of being anxious and being excited and nervous and all for the day. My emotions were at a high point already. And so it was really quite funny because my mom surprised me actually with my swimming coach from the first grade came to watch my defense and had no idea he was coming. And so when I turned around and he was standing there, the fact that this was a surprise that I wasn't expecting, I started bawling my eyes out. And it wasn't like I was really happy to see my coach, but there was no reason that I should be crying. But I turned to my mom and I was like, no more surprises today. I can't handle this today. You know how to do this.
Things out of my control.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So, but, when, this was one of the things that one of the postdocs in my lab told me was going to happen. He said that once you start to get towards the last couple slides in your talk, and you realize that it's almost over, that you're almost there, you're going to start choking up. And even him retelling me this story, he started choking up thinking back to his defense.
I can see the tears right now.
Oh yeah, I'm so upset now. And that's exactly what happened. My third to last slide, my throat started getting tight. I started to feel it waver, and I was like, just make it through. And I barely hung on, for those last 3 slides with, the big overarching conclusions and all that sort of thing.
And then you cried like a baby afterwards. So.
Then I cried definitely during my thank yous in front of everybody. But one interesting thing I noticed, Nikhil, and I don't know if you noticed this or not, or if you did this purposefully. Maybe I attribute it to, the difference between boys and girls, but we'll see what you think.
Oh,
okay.
But so, when I did my thank yous at the end, thanking my family and my friends and, where I'm going next and all this kind of stuff, I blubbered on stage in front of everybody. I just sort of let it go and, thanked everybody for all the different things and cried in front of everybody. For Nikhil, when he did his thank yous, which were very sweet and very sincere, I felt like as soon as your voice started to crack or you started to get emotional, you just stopped. You didn't continue to allow yourself to get emotional. You just went, yeah, thank you. And then you just stopped talking.
I think it's fine, yeah.
So I thought that was so funny that, we both did the same kinds of thank yous, except I allowed myself to be almost hysterical on stage, whereas Nikhil cut himself off.
Yeah, I like to save the blubbering for, the private one-on-one sessions. And not so much in front of the audience. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I'm sure that's the case.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, since I got my blubbering out on stage, it didn't happen later.
Yeah, you were totally together at your after party and beyond. So,
yeah. Yeah, I was. Because it's once I got it out, it was done. I was good.
You got it out of your system.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And actually a friend of mine, when she defended, knew that she was going to get emotional during her acknowledgments and decided not to do them for that reason.
Is that Colleen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like she was almost... Was that true? Was she getting, choked up just saying that she wasn't going to do it?
No, it was, the third to last science slide, and she was, choking up, and it was I'm not going to do the acknowledgments. This is going to be bad.
On the other hand, there was one of my heroes, Dante, who we talk about every now and then on here. He blubbered,
Yeah.
But it was super sweet.
It was great. It was genuine, right?
Yeah.
You want to see that, the person who gave you an awesome talk is also a real person and a human being with a life, and I think that's important to remind the other students of, too. Mm-hmm. Kelly showed all these great photos of, how she spent her weekends fishing and hunting and out in the wilderness.
And all of your friends in music and stuff, you made an outreach. We both showed made an effort to show those pictures and that side of our life.
Yeah, we showed some of the same pictures because, we collaborate like that.
Alright.
Yeah.
But emotional, yes.
Mm-hmm. To be honest, I felt like the actual talk itself went by super fast. Like, I was on autopilot. And, I know it was supposed to be like a 45-minute talk, but it felt like, it started, and then it was like the second to last slide. I was like, how did that happen? It was just...
you know that scene in Old School where they're doing the test at the end for the fraternities, and what's his name? Goofy comedian.
He's like 15 years old.
I know, but he gets like they're having
Will Ferrell. Or?
Will Ferrell. He gets up there for the debate at the end, and he just gets in this other mode and spurts out this amazing few sentences about like fiscal responsibility or whatever, and then it's like a total blackout, and then he comes back to and he's like, "Oh, what happened?" Like that's exactly the way the defense feels, because it starts, whatever happened in the middle, I don't really know, and then it's over.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It made me realize that this must be what politicians feel like all the time. Getting up there, saying a bunch of stuff, and not remembering, like, what the content of it was after the fact.
Oh, I did say that.
Essentially, like, what? Like, we prepared the talk. It wasn't that different from, like, reading off a teleprompter. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. And, when you're doing it, you don't care about the content. You just want to get through the slides. Yeah. So, anyway.
Mm-hmm. That's why politicians always have to apologize for the things they say afterwards.
What? I said that? On record? Yeah. Well, hopefully we didn't say anything incriminating.
I hope not. Talks. That's the thing. I don't know.
Yeah. You both are fine.
Good.
There's nothing bad.
Okay. I remember my first talk here at Princeton, like, it was for a class. We did presentations, and same thing happened. I was super nervous because it was the first talk I had given at Princeton, and so I think I did great. Like, I get off, from in front of the classroom. My friends, their eyes are just huge and staring at me, and I was like, "What? What happened?" They were like, "Kelly, you dropped the F-bomb during your talk." I was like, "What? I did?"
You so would. Of course you did that.
No, not only would she do it, but she wouldn't notice it either.
I know.
And so my
look at this fucking awesome report. Look at that chart.
But so, I remember, like, after they told me about it, I remembered I flipped to a slide and something got, like, shifted off screen, and so it wasn't showing properly. And my one good girlfriend, she came up to me and she was like, No, you didn't say the F-bomb. You said, "Oh, that got frigged up." I was like, "No, I don't say that word." I was like,
Kelly goes all out. That's all
I definitely said that was effed up. Oh yeah, I definitely did. And I was like, "Oh my god, I cursed in my first talk at Princeton. Oh my god."
Wow. I was just imagining you.
Was this colloquium?
No,
was this for class?
This was for Mole 500, like our final presentations at the end of class.
Well, it was early on, whatever.
It was very early, but like that was devastating to me. Like, but that was the whole thing. I like blacked out during it and had no idea what I said.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, so should we move on to talking about job stuff, or how about this? Are there any last words you want to talk about defense stuff?
Last words? This is not like my deathbed, Jason.
For this episode.
Okay. I mean, I do think that, like, despite the anxiety and the autopilot during the talk and all the other things that happen and the parties afterwards, this whole thing kind of feels anticlimactic. And I think the reason it does is because it takes so goddamn long.
Yeah.
Like, you write your thesis, you turn it in, and then you have to wait a month to, like, actually get up there and defend it.
Well, is it also that you're both still here?
That too.
We're all still in Princeton right now.
Well, yeah. I mean, but, we're preparing to, like, do other things. Like, Kelly's packing up and moving to Maine very soon.
That's why, because for me, I don't know if I agree that it's anticlimactic. But I think it's because I'm getting ready to leave. Like,
right.
there is like this sort of ending for me.
Right.
I don't know, I felt like my defense day, oh my god, like, I will never forget that. Like, that was such an awesome day to be with all my friends and family and stuff, and it just felt so heartwarming and good. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it cancels out all the shit that came before it, but that was a good day.
Yeah. And I think it's funny that both of our, like, graduation parties got snowed out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A lot of people didn't show up because of the snow or left early.
Got cut by half, pretty much.
On 2 separate days. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Stupid winter.
Yeah. It was a shame, but it's also nice to have smaller parties too, because then I got to talk to everybody.
Right.
So it was very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Felt bad that the room felt empty, but
no,
I enjoyed it. So
it was fun. It was great.
Yeah,
yeah,
it was great. It was
cool.
All right.
So I guess we can transition to our next topic.
Moving on up.
Yeah.
So now that you've done your thesis defense and you're both officially doctors, you need something to do with the rest of your life.
That's not true. I'm just going to rest on my laurels. From
you don't need something to do, but sweet.
Being a doctor doesn't no?
What are laurels?
Isn't that good enough?
I think Laurel is a great name for a girl.
You want me to rest? Wait, that's weird.
What? I just say. Laurel's a nice name for a lady.
Okay.
So, okay.
I don't know where that saying comes from. Anyway.
Now that you're both doctors, you're going to start jobs, or you have started jobs already. So let's hear about, what the job interview process was for you, in particular, Kelly, because you did that.
Mm-hmm.
And B, what you're doing job-wise, now that you have jobs. And
let's actually start before the job interview with the job search, because I think that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
And we've done a couple episodes on this, but we'll talk about
going
the
through case
of us.
examples is,
of
I
course.
think, super helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. All right, so who wants to start first? All right, let's get Kelly. Dr. Kelly, sorry.
Dr. Kelly, that's right. Get it right.
In 2 weeks, when I become a doctor, I won't have to use that title for you anymore.
Yeah, because then we'll be colleagues, right? But right now, I'm a doctor.
You're above me.
I might ask you to salute me the next time I come into the room.
I might ask you to do some PCRs for me.
Sweet. I'll do them.
Okay.
Not well.
Awesome.
Okay. So, what am I doing? I'll start with.
Sure.
So, I am moving to Maine at the end of next week.
A lifelong dream.
Lifelong dream. To be the genomics education specialist at the Jackson Lab in Bar
partial life dream.
That's pretty good life dream. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, do I really want to work with mice? Not really. But the education is the huge part of it. And so to be able to have gotten the dream job in the dream place right after PhD is like a dream come true.
Yep.
It's everything I could have asked for.
How does one get so lucky?
It's a good question, Nikhil.
It's not luck.
Yeah.
Partial.
It's partial luck. I think it definitely is partial luck because as much as I networked and put forth effort to get this job, first of all, you never know what your competition is going to be. You never know what they're looking for. So, yeah, that's a little bit of luck. But in terms of the job search, the effort to get this job, I think, started back in 2008.
It's a long time.
That's a long time. But, it was really my sort of effort to connect with the people around me when I was at my undergraduate research experience in that area when I was a junior in college. And because when I was there, I really knew that I liked the area and I liked the people, I made an extreme effort to, build connections with the professors and staff members that were there, to remain in contact with the lab through alumni associations and, being a part of their nonprofit corporation. So, the effort to build networking in that area really started back then. And then my actual job search, and we've talked about this a little bit before, I started way too early. Like, I started it probably 2 years ago. Like, really
Not
looking...
too early.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Sometimes you need something to motivate you.
Yes, exactly. That's true. So, but in, like, the past the past year is when, you know, this job really started coming together, when I took the students to Maine last year on our science education trip. I met with the guy who is now going to be my boss. So doing that trip last year, showing him that I'm interested in education, interested in that area, he got to reconnect with me. We started emailing again. You know, that was another big step in the process of getting this job. And then over the summer, when I was really doing a real job search, I was writing to people, sending them my resume, putting in applications, all these kinds of things in preparation for graduating. That's when my boss emailed me and said, I am about to design a new position and I want you to apply for it. So the position hadn't even been created yet. And he wanted to know, basically, if I was going to be interested in something like this. So, partially in writing the job description, he was thinking of maybe having me do it. You know, Jackson is a huge company, so it has to go through the red tape and the HR and all that kind of stuff of, you know, the company. So he couldn't just hire me outright, but he had me in mind for this position. So, I mean, he told me in July about this job, and it didn't even get posted until November. So I was, like, chomping at the bit. I was like, what is this happening? I need to know. But as soon as the job got posted, everything moved very quickly. And now I have it. So we can talk about the interview process in a little bit, but maybe, Nikhil, if you want to talk about how you guys started your company.
Well, wow, this story, I think, goes way back to my second year when I moved into graduate housing by the lake here. It's like apartment complex from the 60s. It looks very like Soviet Russian bloc, like concrete building. And my neighbors were these physicists, Andrew and Doug. And my roommate, Jack, was also a physicist. And, you know, we became really close friends just from living next to each other and all that. You know, for fun, we would do super nerdy things like sit around and say, look, we have a metal railing on our balcony and it's like 20 feet off the ground and there's a tree right there by the lake. Could we build a zipline to like zipline down to the lake? Wouldn't that be awesome?
Oh,
and we
my God.
And we like planned it out. And then we realized that aircraft cable was a little beyond our graduate student budget, and it never happened. But, you know, this final year when I was finishing up my dissertation and writing my thesis, my friend Doug, you know, had just finished his job at the company that he started. He was looking to do something else, and we were talking about it.
And this is Doug from episode number 8.
That's right. This is Doug,
a crowd favorite, by the way.
Oh, the choosing to leave graduate school?
Yeah.
So Doug left graduate school to work on this company, Malwarebytes, and now he doesn't want to do that anymore. So we were talking about it, and you know, we kind of came up with this idea to go into data science, data analytics as consultants, as like professional specialists who can come in and basically do like creative problem solving in any data related area for any industry. And so I know that sounds really broad and really vague, but we've actually, you know, so we put together the company. It's called Zipline Scientific. It's an LLC, so we registered
Wait,
that.
you actually called it Zipline?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
The business card? Oh, he's developing
No!
now.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so awesome! that you
Yeah,
guys
I didn't know
called
the
it
story
that.
behind it, but now that you
So
told
that's
me,
the
I'm like,
story.
oh,
Yeah,
that's so
Zipline
sweet.
Scientific.
That's so cool! Oh, I'm so impressed. I love that story.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep this.
Yeah, it's all yours. You know. Yeah, and so the idea is we're quantitative scientists for hire, and we want to bring, this sort of rigorous scientific method towards dealing with business problems. So, for example, in the healthcare industry, there's a lot of patient data and patient records, and you can use that to predict something useful, like which patients aren't going to show up for their appointments, or which patients are more likely to get readmitted. And so using tools like machine learning to solve real problems in the real world. So that's what the company does. The mechanics of starting a company, was mostly Doug's doing, so I don't really feel like I can speak to those details. But we're an equal partnership. There are 4 of us in the company, and it's I'm excited to work with my friends moving forward and to work on projects that I decide to work on. And we have some clients lined up, which I probably can't talk about on the radio, but yeah. But so far things are going well, and even if this fails, I would argue that it's less risky than doing a postdoc and trying to be a tenure track professor. So, of my choices, I think this is a pretty good bet.
So I think maybe I didn't even realize this, the moral of both of our stories is that it's never too early to start building connections.
Well, and it's not like we built our connections with the explicit purpose of, turning it into a job opportunity. We did it out of interest and friendship and, wanting to, connect with other people.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's never too early to start doing those things. Having interests and making those connections with people. And then when looking at the sort of people that going forward with your job search, I always say, use your connections, use your networking. Don't be afraid to email someone that you haven't talked to in years and be like, hey, this is what I'm deciding I'm going to do with my career. I know you do that. Do you have advice for me? Do you have suggestions of companies that I could look at or ways that I could go about this? I think people and talking to people are key in sort of finding a job.
Yeah. I think being in the academic system, you kind of forget that most people outside of the academic system want to help you, just because they feel like that's their that's like a good way to live their lives. Mm-hmm. Whereas
that's not to say that people in academic systems don't want to help you.
But sometimes it feels a little bit more self-motivated.
Or they want something in exchange.
I could see that, yeah. I think maybe there's a difference in like what you're asking for or what you're trying to do, so maybe...
I think in general, regardless of academia versus non-academia, if you go to someone and say, look, like, I'm asking you for help, and I would really love your advice on something, people are generally open to those kinds of requests.
Yeah.
If you're saying, I need a recommendation or I want something from you, then they may not be as likely to give that unless you're giving them something in return. And I think you should always go into that kind of asking for something with reciprocity in mind and say, like, look, I can help you with your problems if you're willing to give me some advice. Or, ask them how you can help them out. Maybe they want to know something about your particular field. You can talk to them about neuroscience or developmental biology or fly genetics or something. And that's something, see how you can help them too.
I mean, I found it so funny with all the connections I had built in Maine. My boss was emailing me and telling me that this position was going to get posted and that it was posted and all this kind of thing. But even with that, I had at least 3 other people that I knew in the education field in Maine send me the same posting. And they're like, hey, I saw this posting. This looks great for you. You should apply. And I was like, already on it. So, when you have lots of people in your corner and just saying, I would write to people and just say, this is what I'm interested in. If something comes across your desk, an email, a phone call, and you hear of a job posting that, it sort of goes off in your head that, oh, Kelly would be good for this, please email me. And I'd sort of leave it at that. And I did. I got emails back for the same position that I now have, for that they thought I would be a good fit for it. So it was kind of funny.
And this is exactly, this idea of networking and talking to people about what you're doing and explaining to them what you want to do in the future is exactly the same process that we've been using to generate clients for our company. So we're like, look, this is what we do, and this is how we could potentially help you in your context, and if you think of any other situation or person who might be able to use this kind of service, please let me know. And just from telling a few select people, we've suddenly started getting an influx of...
even from just word of mouth. Works.
Yeah, I think, when you go to any given party or get-together or whatever, someone asks you what you do, I think the next natural thing you should do is say what you want to do or where you want to be. And that opens doors, right? Because you're doing that same kind of networking in a way, but it's not culinary. You're just having a conversation.
Yeah,
I usually the most helpful thing about it.
I always tell people at parties that I'm an aspiring rock star.
Yeah.
Usually,
Nikhil has this thing where he doesn't want to identify himself as a grad student, which makes sense.
No. Okay, it's not about not wanting to identify myself as a graduate student. It's about what conversation would I rather have? Would I rather have a dry, boring conversation about my research, which I've had so many times before with people who are mildly interested in science, or would I rather talk about music? And I'd rather talk about music. So I start with, I play bass guitar in a band. And
you hope that opens up, hey, my friend owns a bar, and they have gigs that are open for Friday nights. Do you guys want to play?
I drink scotch on Saturdays. And Mondays.
Hey, no.
No, that's me.
Yeah. No, it's, exactly. So, that's a different thing altogether. But yeah, that's exactly how we got gigs for the band, too. It's I know this bar that has live music on Tuesdays.
You just plant those little seeds, right? Little nuggets of what you want to do, so that
sow your oats.
Yeah.
And I think part of it's just being more open and thinking about those aspects of your life and being more open about them to more people.
Yeah,
so
in normal conversations.
Necessarily. Because it could be with someone who, it could be with a 14-year-old who might not be in anything you're ever interested in. Yet they know, and,
Well, then, if you're talking to someone younger and you're talking about what you want to do with your life and what you do, then maybe someday it'll help them, because maybe they'll end up in the same field as you, and now you're a contact for them moving forward.
Right. So we also, we have a lot to talk about. But
I don't know. Did your friend interview at all? Becoming a partner?
No, it wasn't an interview. It's look, I want to do something with my friends, and I think we can make this work as a consulting company. It was more a question about, or discussion of logistics and timeline and planning and how would this work in practice and
So it's still making sure you can fit into the company, but it's not your ideals and your time and all that kind of thing.
Right. The choosing to incorporate when I knew I would have a defense date, as opposed to when things were still uncertain, and just timing in terms of what he was doing, what I'm doing, what the other two guys in the company are doing, just sort of aligning our schedules and our aspirations.
Yeah, so it's definitely more casual conversation than my interview.
Than yours. So you had more of a traditional interview for this position?
Yeah. So they called me and told me that they wanted me to interview, and there was going to be 3 or 4 other candidates also interviewing for the same position. So they flew me up to Maine for the day. Craziness. But they flew me up to Maine, and it was a whole day interview, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., meeting with everybody I would ever work with at the company. And honestly, it was quite funny, because I mostly was talking to people who had science degrees and who are educators and things, but the woman that gave me the toughest time was the human resources woman. She had the toughest questions for me about education. Because she's looking at it from an outsider's perspective, right? And so she had some really interesting, really sort of meta questions about how I approach education. And there were things that I had to take a second to think about. But yeah, the whole interview process was very tiring, and also going up there, I not only had to interview and promote myself and all that kind of thing, but I also had to do a 30-minute teaching demonstration. So I brought supplies with me to teach these people about virology in a lab that I had never been in before, so it was kind of interesting having to set up for that beforehand. But it went very well. And I also, along with doing the teaching demo for the 6 people that were in the room, we also had another woman Skyping in for the teaching demo. So, that was incorporating, technology into the classroom, and so I ended up carrying this iPad around with me as I was teaching and doing things in the classroom. It was quite funny. But, I think one of the things that helped me most in my interview is I actually sat down with my father, who interviews people because he was a supervisor in a lab. And so he sort of got me in the mode of talking professionally and the types of questions that they might ask me going into it. He didn't know what they were going to ask me about education or anything like that, but he would just sort of approach the general questions that he might ask a candidate. So things like, he said sometimes they would ask questions like, what is your biggest fault? If there was something about your personality that you could change, or anything, what would that be? What do you need to work on?
I'm too awesome.
Yeah, but that's exactly what he said. You need to sort of take something that could be bad, but is really a positive, and talk about those kinds of things.
I worked too damn hard for my own good.
That's exactly what I said. So I don't know if that's a cliche or not, but basically my whole spin on it is that I don't procrastinate. And that was my negative, because it impacts me negatively, because I don't focus on myself or my life while I'm trying to get projects done. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, but fortunately the woman one of the women actually did ask me that question during my interview. Yeah. And I said that answer, and she was like, oh my God, me too. She was like, I can't stop. I can't put it down until it's done. And so it worked very well that I could connect with her in that way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just luck.
So how was this experience different than, say, interviewing for the PhD program? Was it just the questions were different? They were more meta, questions? Or?
Oh, yeah. The interview for the grad school process, they want to know a little bit about you. They just want to make sure that you are who you say you are on paper, and that's actually true in person. And then, we all know that they go off and talk about themselves for the next half hour, so you get to sit back and relax. And that generally with these types of programs that you're applying to as a PhD, that you're in. Once you get accepted and you have the interview, you're going to get in, unless you do something absolutely terrible during the interview weekend. This is an interview. This is, if I said something that they didn't like, something that didn't align with their mission and goal of, education that they're doing at the lab, I would not have been asked to come join them. But I feel like, and this is just luck too, because I knew a little bit about what their mission was as an education group. They do a lot of undergraduate work and course design and all those sorts of things. So the experiences that I've had fit with that very well. And because of those experiences, I had something to talk about when they asked me those questions. And so it just worked out that we did our goals aligned, sort of, in my perspective and what they wanted out of this position. But I mean, they interviewed, I think, at least 2 candidates internally for this position. So this is someone already working at JAX that knows the people, that agrees with the mission and all that kind of thing. They didn't get a job offer. So there was something about me that fit better what they were looking for than other people. And the only way that they understood that was through the person-to-person interview. Hearing me speak and performing teaching and all that.
So, in your preparation for this interview, were you, like, specifically looking for information about, like, their mission and what they're, like, how to align yourself with what they were doing, or was that something that you realized after the fact?
I probably could have done more research on it going into it, but it was really something I looked for after the fact. I think for this position, the whole interview process was going on when I was in Jason's position right now. I was writing and trying to finish up and get this done. So I really didn't pay attention to those kind of things because I sort of said to myself, you're going to apply for this one position during this very stressful time. And it's the dream job, so if you get it, awesome. But if you don't, you wouldn't have time to do anything else anyway. So, like, I can't apply to 5 different positions right now. I only have time for one. So I'm picking this one, and I'm going to go for it. But, you know, I have all these other things that I'm trying to do, too. So I could have done more research, but I think it just worked. That it just so happened that the way I approach education and the things that I want to do with it matched them. Mm-hmm. That was luck. That was really luck. Yeah.
And then after the interview, which you did really well at, they kind of left you hanging for a while.
Oh my god, they left me hanging for
Kelly was a stress case for a few days there.
Oh my god.
How long was it?
It was a month and a half.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that was weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe even, almost, month and a half. That was awful.
And, like, at least once a week she'd come to my office. She was like, I haven't heard anything from Jax yet.
Oh my god. And people would ask me constantly, and it's that, that one question that nags at you. I'm like, no, I haven't heard anything yet. Oh, stop asking me.
Yeah. That's the worst thing about, like, defending really soon.
Yeah, Jason, when are you going to graduate?
Well, it's not even that. It's more the, you know what you're doing afterwards. Like, that is the hard part. Like, no, I don't know yet. I have, a meeting with this person or that person, and we'll see if that turns into something, but...
Yeah, those nagging questions that always just get at you.
And I don't even mind that someone asks. It's just like, I have to...
Yeah, they're genuinely curious. Like, they're trying to make conversation.
Yeah, no, and I would never blame them for that. That's totally
But you're
fine.
right. What you should do is write your answer on an index card and just show it to them, because you get asked it so much times.
That's
just
what it feels like.
Yeah.
Or just have a sign to you, don't ask me that question.
Yeah. And really, it's just like the delay from... when I finished college, other people were in that position. They were getting their diplomas, their bachelors, whatever, and everyone would ask them, what are you doing afterwards? And I'm like, I was going to grad school, so I didn't care.
Yeah.
Well, it's also kind of like, when you come back from, like, summer vacation as a college student, everybody's like, what did you do this summer? How was your summer? And you're just like, it's so frustrating to have the same conversation over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the one thing I did really want to mention, because it was something that sort of caught me by surprise during the interview process, something that, I don't think about in going into an academic job or anything like that, and that was mentioned to me by one of my good friends literally the day before I left for my interview, was that the new sort of state of affairs for companies is that they don't tell you what the position gets paid. They ask you what you want to get paid. And so my friends told me this, and I was like, what? I have no idea. I'm waiting for them to tell me. I have no idea what I want to get paid.
No, this is a classic negotiation tactic. The company is trying to get the most value out of you as they can. So they want to pay you as little as you're willing to accept. Mm-hmm. And they also know that you're a graduate student and you come from a very low-paying job. And so that any offer is going to be better than what you were coming from. And so they're using this information to their advantage to, like, get themselves a better position. And so, Kelly, maybe you can talk about, like, how you negotiated your salary. Like, what did you do to prepare for that?
Obviously, from what we've talked about off microphone, maybe I didn't negotiate as well as I should have. But so basically what I did is that night after my friends told me about this, is I went to some online resources like Glassdoor, where you can sort of input all the information regarding the position that you're going into. So, I said it's education, it's in Maine, it's doing undergrad stuff, it's doing this type of teaching, like all the different facets of what this job is going to be about. That I'm going to get to travel and all these kinds of things.
Did they have any information on what other people made at at Jack's, like at the company?
No, that was really hard to find. Like, I found a couple of positions that were available online to look at, but they had nothing to do with what I was going to be doing. So I really couldn't base...
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had maybe an idea, like, production facility worker makes the same as a grad student does here. So maybe that gave me some basis.
Right, it's like
what
relative, but it gives you a range, it doesn't give you a number.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So on these websites, you put in all the information, and it takes 10 minutes to really go through all the questions that they ask you on the website, and at the end it gives you the range of salaries for those types of positions. So it gives you the low range, the high range, the median salaries, the 75 percentile, all that kind of thing. And so it gives you a good idea as to what you should be asking for going into the position. So for me, I looked at it and I said, okay, here's the median salary. Well, I think I'm a little bit better than that because
you are.
Because I am.
I think you're a lot better than that. I mean, you have like a brand name degree from a top tier institution.
But also, I had to take it. I mean, I know that Jackson is sort of a national lab. They pull from everywhere, people from all across the world to come in and work for them. So they have to be competitive nationally. But also, you had to take in consideration too where I'm moving, and in Maine the standard of living is just a whole lot lower than everything, so I can't ask for 6 figures because that's an impossibility up there. Like, they're just not going to be able to pay for that kind of stuff. So I basically took the median number, gave myself a couple extra thousand, and that's what I asked for going into this. And Nikhil, you can add to this, but I kind of also didn't want to overshoot what I should be paid for, because I thought that might reflect negatively on me, because if they're looking for a good deal and I say I want, $15,000 more than the median, then they might go, oh, she thinks she's too good, like, when we can't afford her, kind of thing.
So I think you're right that you want to be careful in that situation, but one way to approach it is to highball them, give them that upper end of the range. So you've figured out your range from Glassdoor. You know what the median is, and you know what the high end is.
Mm-hmm.
And you say the high end, and you say, because I have this specific experience, because I have, you tell them the 3 or 4 reasons.
That's true.
Why you deserve more than the median.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if you can justify it to them, then it's okay to make that kind of, this is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that maybe a more strategic way to go around the salary negotiation is to not state a number yourself. Just sort of play the game back at them.
I know, that's so hard at the moment.
It's hard because they're HR and this is what they do for a living.
Yeah.
This is like their job is to get you to agree to a low price. Right? They're trying to screw you.
Yeah.
I mean, you all work for the same company, but their objective is not your objective.
Yeah, HR's job is to protect the company, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They're not interested in the worker. So, one way you can approach it is they ask you, what do you want to get paid? And you say, well, I looked up on Glassdoor and the salary range is this much. Is this in line with what you pay people in the same kind of position here? Mm-hmm. And then you wait for them to respond to that.
I will jump in quickly and say I've read a piece, I think on Harvard Business Review, that was about negotiations and how that HR person doesn't necessarily want you to go low, but they can't give you the high number that they might want you to have. So it obviously is different from company to company and negotiator to negotiator. But the people sitting across from me during this interview want you to be at least a bit happy, and they don't want to feel like the bad guys. Just psychology-wise, they don't want to feel like they're screwing you because you're going to be their colleague, hopefully.
Right. And I think you can approach it the same way. You don't want to screw the company, but you can be honest with them and be like, look, I could get paid this much somewhere else, and I'm worth this much. Yeah. And this is what you need to pay me, and if you want me to feel like this is a good deal for both of us. Mm-hmm. So it's the same kind of dynamic goes both ways.
Yeah. I mean, what I had said to her was, I knew what Jackson postdocs get paid because that was one of those salaried positions that I could find online. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty good for a postdoc there. That's definitely the high end of postdoc salary ranges that I've seen. But so the way I approached it with her was, I expect, because this is a professional position, I expect to make more than a postdoc. And she said, oh yeah, definitely more than a postdoc. And then I gave her my number, which was well above that. And so, but she went, yeah, that's in the range. And she could have been putting it on. But, I got the impression, even from when I said that number, that was on the high end of what they were looking for. So,
but she's HR because she can act.
I know. But she's so sweet and nice.
Her job, Kelly.
I know.
Just like your job is to educate, and you can do that any day, all the time.
You're doing it right now.
Yeah.
I am, yeah.
For free.
For free.
Just have to remind you that.
Hey, I pay $10 a month for this.
Yeah, and this is what you get at a podcast every now and then.
But, I feel like that was, one of the more important pieces to keep in mind going into an interview. Are these more sort of, we're coming in from grad school where everything's just been collegial and everything's sort of casual on the day-to-day process, and now you're all of a sudden thrown in this situation where it's competitive and you have to negotiate things and be sort of in tune to the corporate world, and that was such a different approach as to how I would have taken it without sort of my friend's help and my father's help in preparing for this interview.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything else that surprised you about the process? You were kind of informed last minute about the salary thing, but was there anything that was a total surprise?
I'm trying to think back.
I guess not then.
No.
Well, it sounds like you're in good communication with the people offering the job, so...
Yeah. So maybe that's why it wasn't such a surprise, because...
Because you knew what the boss guy was like.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, that was, oh my god, that was the biggest key in sort of deciding whether or not to take this job. Because, obviously we've all dealt with PIs, how frustrating that could be, having a boss that sort of isn't on your side all the time.
And a boss that has no accountability.
A boss that has no accountability. That is huge, and something I was really looking forward to moving into a company. That everyone sort of has a bigger boss that they work under. But that was really the key. I knew my boss as a friend, and so from that perspective, I was like, oh, he's a great guy, we're going to have an awesome time, he's going to be awesome to work under. But then actually getting to meet with his administrative secretaries and the people that are sort of parallel to them, they just raved about him. They were like, he's so easygoing, he's always supportive, he, gives us the time to do what we need to do, he pushes, but in a very supportive way, to just hear those kinds of comments about who I'm going to be working for. And now especially, because going into grad school, I had summer jobs and things, but I never really had a boss. And so now I know what a boss means and the sort of qualities that I look for in a boss. And those things that I've learned in grad schools are life lessons that can apply anywhere. So going into learning about my new boss, I had specific questions to ask and specific things that I wanted to hear about his managerial styles. And I heard those things. And I was like, okay, this is what I want.
I think the one thing you can take from this and apply to maybe your first year of graduate school when you're shopping for an advisor is definitely talk to the people who work for that PI.
Yeah.
Get their opinions of them before you commit to join the lab. Mm-hmm. It's it's not that there are certain qualities that make someone a good PI versus a bad PI. There might be, but it's more about fit. Who is a good boss for you as an individual, and only you can decide that.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yep.
So,
got any more questions for
now
us,
that
Jason?
we're going on 2 hours.
I think we're...
And Jason's freaking out because he hasn't been writing.
Yeah, that's part of it. That's definitely part of it. I don't know if we should... I think...
Can you name a favorite moment of graduate school, Kelly? Defending?
Doing the show.
The day of your defense, yeah.
I was going to say, leaving for vacation. That was always the highlight, being excited.
Going hunting.
Favorite moment from the show? I could say you said this is the crowd favorite, but my favorite was listening to Doug's episode, because it's just the emotions that it pulled out of me and that feeling of heartache. That was I felt like that episode was the most powerful, definitely.
Yeah, I think Doug has this ability to, like, lay everything out there with such clarity.
He does.
Like, the way he thinks about problems is admirable.
So do you have a favorite part or episode or anything?
I mean, I think my favorite thing about this is I really enjoy kind of brainstorming ideas for episodes. And I know, like, I'll often, like, stop you guys and be like, hey, I had this idea, somebody we should talk to, or, like... and I think just thinking about this issue of how to get the most out of graduate school is something that really excites me and something that I've really enjoyed thinking about. So I don't know if there's a particular moment from the show or a particular guest we had. I actually think that talk we had with Ben McNeil was one of my favorite conversations that we did in the studio. Mm-hmm. Just because it was our first professor guest and it kind of felt like we'd made it a little bit, and we're like, yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that a professor contacted us and wanted to be on our show.
I know, right?
Like, I think that was like a highlight for me. That was big. Yeah. And the conversation we had was like, it's like, wow, like, this isn't just a grad student struggle. Like, the system is severely broken, and even professors are starting to see it, even when it's not in their best interest to talk about it. Like, he's definitely probably made himself some enemies at his institution by starting thinkable.org or something. I don't know. Maybe. Or people were just like, oh, whatever. I can imagine, yeah. Yeah.
It's like something that's trying to change the funding system overall, but like in a small way at first. So
Right.
I can see that being irritating to some people.
Mm-hmm. How about you? What's your favorite moment?
Oh, man. There's so many.
Well, I can remember when we first started really pouring out the episodes, and every week you would email us and be like, oh my god, we have this many listeners! You'd be so excited.
That was kind of the hey, let's keep doing this because we need the morale boost sometimes.
I think some of the like off the air moments were the funniest. Like, there's some good stuff we talked about for the dating episode that never made it in the show.
Like, which one? I don't know. We already talked about our speed dating on there.
Well, that was. I mean, that's always fun to tell embarrassing stories about yourself.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I kind of liked I don't know, just the aspect of sitting in a room with people I like and having those conversations recorded. Because they're like the same conversations I would have had on a Saturday night at the graduate student bar, just hanging down.
Well, we usually don't have as many beers in us when we...
I know, so slightly more sober version of... slightly. of these conversations that we've had before, or in different ways, or with different people, but that they mirror the conversations that so many people have had. And, if they're doing their graduate work now and listening to us on their phones or iPods or whatever, and like, oh, I've had this talk with my friend before. Mm-hmm. Like, that, to me, that's the coolest part of doing this show.
Well, that's why we started it in the first place, right? Because we have all these conversations and all these bitch sessions and all this kind of thing, and we felt like we find comfort in that we all feel the same way, and that we can all help each other get through it by giving each other advice on the little tidbits that we know. And you had the brilliant idea of sharing it with a larger audience so that they can also feel some solidarity.
Well, I think a lot of it, when we first talked about starting this podcast, you and I, it's like I think we both used podcasts in a similar way. It's like we were in lab, kind of alone in what we were doing. And podcasts were keeping us company throughout the whole experience. And it was like, a way to listen to people talking and be part of a conversation and engage with the world outside of your lab while you were stuck there pipetting and doing bench work and, like, dissecting retinas or whatever it is.
Yeah. And podcasts have grown so much since when I started listening to them, like in 2006 or 7.
I know. We should, like, join Gimlet Media.
Oh, God, we should. Hey, Alex, what's up, man? That just to be able to take part in that growth is fun. And listeners, thank you for listening to all this, too, and talking to us on Twitter and Reddit.
Yeah, all, like,
emails and
thousands of you guys.
Yeah, there's
my God,
some number of you guys.
That's more people than I know in real life, so that's kind of cool.
It's almost as many as I know.
Well, you're popular.
I'm popular.
Yeah.
No, that's not true.
No, you are.
I've got a follow. We have got a lot of listeners in India for the show, which is great. I love it.
Oh.
just out of nowhere, and I have no idea how you guys found out about us. Please email me. I want to know.
Or tweet at us.
Tweet at us.
Yeah.
At PhD Podcast. That's us. All right, so let's finish this up.
It's been a great first season.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm. Let's see what the second season brings us.
Yeah, maybe some new voices.
Maybe some less snow.
New voices, less snow.
More snow!
More snow for Kelly.
More snow for people going to Maine.
Make sure your roof joists
More
are intact.
bears. Yeah, there are a lot of dangers up there. Bears and boats and snow. There are all these aspects to Kelly's job that we have not talked about. But.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hardest part of my day is getting to work alive.
Yeah, you gotta work out that boat pool.
Yeah, boat pool. That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Boat pool in the work.
So I was just gonna say, for the listeners, that we hope what we've talked about today gives you some insight as to how to finish and how to move forward in your job search. And Nikhil and I wish Jason the best of luck in finishing up, and hoping that he finds a job that makes not only a job, but a job that makes him happy and successful.
Oh, well, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I'll print out a cardboard cutout of Kelly so that she can attend your defense. And
Yes!
Yeah!
She'll be sitting in the front row staring at you.
Can you guys be joined together? Can you...
Yeah!
That'd
Just
be
like
perfect.
do something that you can
Make that
wrap
happen.
your arm through, so I'm next to you at all times.
Yeah, it'll be my Halloween costume too. So it's like killing two birds at once.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great!
For sure.
I'm so glad you guys were here.
Yeah.
Did all this. So.
No, I mean you're almost there, man. Just hang on.
It's so close. I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel it. Just need to be done.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Can't you hear the angst in his voice? And the
I've been harboring
anxiety?
angst since like age 13, man.
When he started listening to grunge music.
Yeah.
Grunge. I started grunge when I was like first or second grade.
Yeah.
Oh
okay.
boy! All right, you got
Yeah.
some
I've
deeper
got-
issues that we
Moved
can't
on to
deal with.
emo after that.
Mhm.
Some good yellow card, taking back summer.
You know, I was always a fan of like the ska music because it had the happy like horns and the major key tonality, and then the like ridiculously depressing words. And I was like, this is kind of funny. I'm so ironic and
Fish
cool.
is great at that.
Yeah.
I'm so ironic and cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's me.
Yeah. Especially when you sing Alanis Morissette.
Or Nally and Brulia.
Oh, that's right.
I can't do that anymore. My voice has gotten too deep.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. It actually has
You've
grown
aged.
deeper. I have.
Couldn't do what I used to do.
It's so true.
Yeah.
All right, kids.
All right, kids.
A very special thanks to you, the listener. We had so much fun recording episodes and even more fun seeing the reaction to our show. You gave us an outlet for this energy and you spread the word. This is the end of Season 1. Thanks for bearing through the learning curve of podcasting and always giving us great feedback. We'll be back very soon with new and familiar voices. Follow us on Twitter at PhD Podcast to keep in touch and send email to feedback@phdinprogress.com. As always, you can find more information at phdinprogress.com.
A dream come true.
Yep.
It's everything I could have asked for.
How does one get so lucky?
It's a good question, Nikhil.
It's not luck.